Hey, it's Tim and Lisa, and you're listening to the REI Concierge podcast. The REI Concierge helps Americans living abroad find and buy great investment properties in the U.S. From analyzing markets to finding local partners to closing your first deal, we are partnered with you every step of the way. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello, welcome back to our next episode of the REI Concierge podcast with Tim and Lisa. We have another exciting guest today. We're super excited. Tim, I'm going to let you do the formal introduction, but I'm just going to tell our listeners, you have heard of this guest many times throughout our podcast. Lorenzo, if your ears have ever been ringing over the last 6 months, it's because we talk regularly about Tim's flipper friend. So Tim, give us a formal introduction to your flipper friend.
Are you sick of being called the flipper friend yet, Lorenzo?
I'm not sure yet. Let's see how this goes.
All right. We'll see. We'll keep going for a while. So we are privileged to be joined by my friend, Mr. Lorenzo Wooten, my flipper friend to all you folks listening. He has several designations in terms of what he does. He does it all, ladies and gentlemen. He does it all in real estate. So he is a commercial agent. He is a flipper. He started in residential. I've known him over a decade now, which is wild to think about. But when I first met him, he was doing residential and then just got bigger and bigger and took on the commercial world and flipped, and he does it all. So he's got a lot to share with us. I'm excited to learn what he has to say. So Lorenzo, I don't have an official title for you except flipper friend. So why don't you tell us what you actually are and what title you go by? How about that?
I appreciate that. Well, Tim and Lisa, I feel honored to be a part of your podcast and being introduced over the last couple of weeks as the flipper friend. That's new to me. So I've been called many things, but I'll take that one. But I appreciate your audience as well. So as you mentioned, I work as a commercial real estate broker. That's my, let's call it that my 9 to 5. And I've been in real estate really my whole adult life. I started off on the finance end with Fannie Mae. I had this entrepreneurial bug in 2008. And so I left this great government paying job in 2008. So that tells your audience that I'm a little bit crazy if you remember that time frame, the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And I started off as a residential agent with Keller Williams. And as you mentioned, I was close to the time. No, we met a little later than that, probably, Tim, but either way, no, it was around that time. And so I had this, I moved to doing flips at that time as well, shortly after the Great Recession was coming to an end. So it's called around 2011. And then in 2013, I transitioned to commercial only, still with Keller Williams, but no longer doing residential sales. And although I love residential sales, it was great. I was rookie of the year in my county, had a nice team. I just didn't like it. And I know this business has to be something that you have to be passionate about. I love the number side of business and the B2B side of business, and not so much showing residential houses and looking at wallpaper. I transitioned more to the commercial end because of all the reasons I just mentioned. And as you mentioned, since that time, I've been keeping up doing 4 or 5 flips per year, and also keeping up my business as far as brokering commercial deals, mostly on multifamily deals and mixed use in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland corridor. So a little bit of a long intro, but that's me. And then I'm also the flipper friend.
It is. There's so much I want to ask. Usually it's Tim that's jumping in. It's like, I have so many questions. I have so many questions. And I would love, Lorenzo, if you're willing to share, what is it that originally drew you to real estate? I mean, you said you've been in this for your whole adult life. Like, what is it that originally even took you in this direction?
Yeah, I would start off to give credit to my father, and Tim may have heard this story. We used to meet with a networking group for many years, and it started young. And my father was a real estate agent, and he owned a couple small residential properties. So instead of playing basketball, running around on the weekends like the rest of my friends, he had me cutting grass and painting and going to landlord-tenant court or settlements, and I couldn't stand it. I said I would never be a real estate agent. I would never touch real estate, and I'm doing everything he did. So he gave me the vision. So I'll start there, which is crazy, right? And then secondly,
Awesome.
as I became a young adult, reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, And reading that book, and I heard you talk about that, Tim, on another podcast, and it really resonated with me as like, this is a way to build wealth, to have, making money while I'm sleeping, to leave a legacy for my daughter, and really to create a life that I want for myself and my family. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad really was instrumental to me. And I've been a student and reading other books that I can also recommend to your audience since that time that propelled me here. And I want to propel further. So I haven't stopped growing, but that's how I got started.
That's really cool. I always think it's it's such a gift that parents give their kids when even though you hated it when you were a kid.
That's the whole
you clearly at some, level saw the value, and then, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it just kind of like takes the message home. And then, as that young adult reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you kind of look back at your dad and you're like, oh, that's what he was doing. He wasn't just torturing.
Right. It wasn't just free labor. Right. It was actually his son that he was indirectly teaching. Because he wasn't necessarily, son, this is what I want you to do. It was just go do it. So I learned indirectly, quite honestly, but I still credit him and I'm extremely grateful.
That's awesome.
So Lorenzo, I remember I probably met you in 2011. And honestly, you were influential to me getting involved in real estate. I don't think I ever told you that, but that was back when I was working for my IT company and just kind of, just the definition of a W-2, go do this, you get a little bit, we get a lot, et cetera, et cetera. And I would just watch Lorenzo always looking good in his nice suits and kind of doing his own thing and making his own schedule and hiring assistants when he just got started and like building a team. And I was just like, man, this guy's got something that I want. And it was around that time I first read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And you and I have never discussed this, but it was kind of like the seed had been planted. And I was like, I like what Lorenzo's doing. And like, I remember just, when you first started flipping, I was like, please send me your spreadsheets. I want to learn these numbers, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, all right, man, I got stuff to do, but here's your spreadsheets. But you were always like super gracious with me, like trying to teach me how you flip and do stuff like that. And then just watching you grow over the years into commercial and just kind of like outgrowing the things you were doing. I was just like, man, so I just wanted to share that with you because you've been influential to me. And I want to talk a little bit about, let's go backwards a little bit to why you left Fannie Mae, if you don't mind. Like, what was that, just chaos in 2008 where you're like, all right, I get it, but I want to be on the other side and I want to do my own thing? Or was it just that entrepreneurial bug where you're just like, I want to kind of run my own show?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I appreciate you sharing the inspiration. You never shared that with me. So
I didn't. I figured I'd do it live on the air. But yeah, you really were, man. Like the more I think about it, the more I look back and I'm like, I was really, I was inspired by Lorenzo in like 2011, when you were first getting started. And I was like, man, I got to do this. I got to do this real estate thing and I got to build my own business. So yeah. There you go.
I know you're trying to get a tear moment for your audience and get me to smile, but I'm not going to let it happen. So, but
come on, man.
I know, right? I don't know, like you guys or maybe others. You taught, go to school, went to Lincoln University, and received my MBA, University of Maryland. Get this great job and ride it out and ride the corporate ladder. And I was on that dream. And if anyone knew me during my college years, it's like, one day I'm going to work at Fannie Mae. And I was able to achieve that goal. And I'm like, great. Then all of a sudden, this entrepreneur bug started hitting. I flipped one property and then one that was the hardest one in my career, the very first one, analysis paralysis. But after that, it became a domino effect. And so I'm purchasing properties during that time. And what resonated with me, I was traveling for Fannie Mae and I was in Chicago. And I was upset in a meeting because I was losing out on an opportunity for a new development deal in Washington, D.C. And I said, oh my goodness. And I was so upset and I wasn't as passionate with Fannie Mae anymore. And to be transparent, I was, going through a divorce and just a lifestyle change for me. And I said, I'm in my 30s right now, mid 30s. And if I don't make this change for entrepreneurship, I probably never will. And I don't want to live a life with regrets. So I had enough money to save that would last me. If I didn't make any money for a year, I would be okay. And I left Fannie Mae. And I started off just flipping. The market changed, as I mentioned, in 2000, around that time frame, that Great Recession. So I said, hey, let me get my real estate license just to sell my properties. But then that transitioned to a career. I didn't necessarily become a real estate agent thinking I was going to make a career out of it just for my own properties with the initial idea. So it really just the passion of my entrepreneurial spirit and realizing that there was a ceiling at Fannie Mae, but there isn't one in owning my own business. And so I followed that dream.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much to, so I said this on one of our last podcasts. I was going to say there's so much to unpack there, but then I told Lisa to not allow me to say that because I hate it when people say there's so much to unpack there. So I don't want to say that, but there's so much to look more into there. So.
Before you look into that, I just want to highlight, I feel like we need to quote you, Lorenzo, because you could take the Fannie Mae and plug in any other organization, but I'm not sure if I'll get it exactly how you said it, but there was a ceiling, you said, at Fannie Mae, and with your own business, there's no ceiling. And I think there's so many different, we could take out Fannie Mae and plug in so many things that there's a ceiling in so many traditional jobs. And for some people, totally fine, like no big deal. It's great. But for others, I resonate with the entrepreneurial bug and like wanting to kind of have more flexibility and freedom. And it takes courage, and yet it also, like, the returns on that risk are limitless.
It is, and I appreciate you saying that, Lisa. And it's like, yes, I had a guaranteed check. I was in my 30s. I was making six figures. It felt great, but it was a sales job, and I would get bonuses based on my volume, and I was probably getting the smallest fraction of what I was overall bringing to Fannie Mae. Yeah. I said, wow, what if I work for myself and I'm able to achieve more, which I was able to do. I've obviously had, like other entrepreneurs, I've had my rough patches during the last, 12 years plus of entrepreneurship. But what I'm getting at is that I work harder now, but sometimes it doesn't feel like work. I could work till 2:00 in the morning, and I'm so passionate about it. I realize this is my legacy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 2:00 in the morning, but it doesn't feel that way. So I do work hard, or harder than when I was at a 9 to 5, but I see the rainbow. So that's what makes it. And then I enjoy what I do too.
Listen to the full podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, or any of your favorite podcast apps.